process or how we might improve this for the next meeting. So it's worthwhile.
I have a question, please. I understand you're going to double the water and sewage rates next year. How about making people pay that put a lot of garbage out? Because my husband and I have a quarter of a bag a week. We recycle everything. And all our green garbage goes into the compost. And I don't think it's fair, a lot of us are on fixed incomes, that we should pay for the people that abuse it. I think the people that put a lot out should pay for it, and the people that don't shouldn't. I don't think it should be a random thing.
You're bang on. We've, on a number of things. First off, we do have to up the water and sewer rates because we're subsidizing them significantly out of the operating fund. We've also agreed that with water, for instance, if we put meters on, and we can have the people who don't abuse water pay less than a regular monthly rate, and as you get up to where you're using more and more, you'll pay a higher rate. And we've reduced garbage in the same way. We need to put some restrictions on how many cans you can put out and have penalty. You want to put another can out, you get a sticker, you pay more.
Good idea.
Because I agree with you. You know, I see people putting out a can and 4 or 5 bags, and we use about a half a can.
That's right.
I have a question. I've asked a couple of you on it. A couple of years ago, we had, before the OCP, there were all sorts of meetings in town, and there was quite a lot of meetings up here actually. Wilf Marsh was presiding over it at the time. We brought him in, and there was a consensus of what people in Cumberland wanted their downtown to be. How they'd like to see it landscaped, how they'd like to see it designed. Like I think there was one instance where there was a boulevard going down the main street of Danville. And I see a couple of weeks ago in the paper, we're getting some amenity money from Slag Lumber, and the $30,000 was to redesign downtown. Well, if we've already done it, why are we spending $30,000 to do it again? What happened to all the plans and the designs that were, at that time, were brought together with the people?
I think they're still there, but this is Slag's idea was to improve the entrance into the community from their property right into town. And this was their idea of putting up some money to do the, not so much a study of what you want, but a plan how you're going to implement it. It won't be just a repeat of a study. How are you going to design this right from their property into the community, and then the remaining amount of money go into the actual project?
Well, couldn't we dig out those files and sort of get some ideas generally of what the people of Cumberland wanted to see?
Absolutely.
You know, I'm sure it would cut time in half and save possibly
A lot of money.
And in fact, today we met with a group who are going to start working with the people on the street and the business owners, the building owners, the public at large, and they're going to go around as a committee and give opinions as to how we implement this right from Slag, if you will, to Camp Road.
So who's on the committee?
Pardon?
Who's on the committee since it didn't go out for volunteers from the whole?
These are people that came and approached us and asked. I don't think there's any limit to who's on the committee. Leslie, you want to name? I know I had it listed.
Is actually the Communities in Bloom Committee. The feeling was at the time that the committee did not want to enter the competition again this year because of the amount of work that was involved in it. So it came up at council that maybe the Communities in Bloom Committee would like to take this on as a project. They actually came to the meeting today to talk about the terms of reference and what council was looking for. And the members that sit on that committee are myself, Ron and Cindy Batterman, Barb Girodi, Keith Tatton, Karen Harmison, and Holly Cooper. They were all Communities in Bloom Committee members.
But I'm sure it wouldn't be restricted to that if someone else wanted to join it.
Yep. And that, I know that's on that will be discussed at the next meeting as to the possibility of enlarging the committee. But they wanted to have the meeting with council first.
Don't you think that it should actually be opened up to the general public rather than just a few people on a community in Blooms thing that has obviously died with the way planning has been going on in the village?
Pardon, what do you mean?
Getting community involvement, a lot of stuff could be done by volunteers rather than paying a landscape architect, is what I was told the $30,000 would be used for, to come up with designs rather than having meetings where people, like we used to have meetings where people could come and do the planning of that
That's
sort of stuff.
exactly what the direction the committee wants to go in.
There are volunteers.
Yes, and as they reaffirmed tonight that the planning department would not be sitting on the committee. This is all volunteers that will be doing all this?
When the committee comes forward with an idea or for this stretch, our thought was to then bring it back and make sure a planner says there's no technical problems with doing what they're proposing, and Public Works would be involved to make sure that what they're asking you to do can be done, in fact, technically. So, I think
So does the general public have any input at all?
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely.
That's what they said. Part of the terms of reference is they go to the general public.
Another sticky thing, I think, for council, because it's money, is treescapes on the main street. Replacing the trees that used to be there, now it's just a little cement plug.
We'd love to see.
I know a lot of developers, we can ask them to put boulevard trees in when they develop. But if it's on town property, that means we have to maintain them.
Well,
Which is money.
Except-
But I mean, I don't think, we used to live in Qualicum. I'm sure you've all been there with the communities and look. And they pick the right trees out, and once a year they go around and they prune the trees.
that's
And
it.
basically, that's all they have to do. And so there's not a huge maintenance expense. We will get some, I think, if we get trees in, we will get some vandalism. Every town has it.
Yeah.
And we have to have a fund where we're going to just keep replacing the trees, because eventually they grow up and they don't break trees anymore.
Picking the right trees was part of this discussion we had earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The trees they've got are uprooting the sidewalks, and you've got to
Yeah.
make sure you don't get trees that, like willows that seek the
Yeah.
water lines and
Well,
whatnot, so.
there are the right trees out there. But I think from the feeling I got at those meetings we went to a couple of years ago was that most people are in favour of putting trees down the main street, because every town, even downtown Vancouver, is full of trees.
That's right.
And it makes a huge difference.
And
Back from the developers about the council decision to well, basically no more water connections.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, what we've explained to them is, what we said publicly is that that statement was a statement, in fact, that was a law regardless of whether we made past that resolution. We were reminding them, you cannot give building permits or development permits if you don't have the water to supply them. And so we made the statement loud and clear for two reasons. One, so that people who were, smaller groups who were going to come forward and talk about coming into the office and putting up money to start a plan and then find out they can't get water, it's not fair they don't know up front. We wanted people to be well aware that we can't expand until we resolve our water issues. We've also spoken to Royston about that. So we've said to the developers, obviously, that if you want to move forward before we have the opportunity to fix our water, you better be talking to our negotiators, I guess.
Are we still negotiating with the RDN?
With the regional district?
Yeah, for the water up and down, for the Kensington development, if that goes ahead.
Well, if you leave Kensington out of it, I'll say yes, because we're not dealing with Kensington.
No.
We're dealing with the regional district,
Yes.
Area A, and possibly forming a partnership in a water system that will allow them to take the excess if the study says there's excess. I'm given to understand the preliminary study that I always forget this acronym, H2Hill. CMH2Hill is a consultant that apparently does worldwide water studies. Anyway, I understand the preliminary report is that indeed the initial studies we had about the amount of water that's there is true. So there's lots of water, but it's got to be significant quantities to capture or deliver that water, as well as, in fact, the last number we heard was $40 million. As well as that doesn't take into account that if the federal government, which we know they will in the next year or two, are going to bring out higher treatment standards. So we have to make sure we know what onus is on the village for the people that are here now. What is our reasonable share of all that? And the rest has to be either the regional district, because we can get an advantage by offering the The fact that we have license on Van West Lakes, which was smart of the council gone by, that we don't, for our foreseeable future need those lakes, we're told.
We need to upgrade the Hamilton Dam that was taken down.
Yes, we do.
That's to be rebuilt up again, because we got pretty short last year.
Actually, when we were short, we did still have, Allen Lake was half full, but because of the turbidity, it wasn't used as much as it could have been. It was there for firefighting. But we need to clean up the outlet, or I'd let Kevin explain some of that. Where we take the water out of Allen Lake needs to have something done to it, and perhaps the way they did the spillway, et cetera, so that it's clearer water. We need to bring Hamilton Lake Dam back up. The question is, when we took it down, you may recall the engineers told us, unless we expand, we've got enough water. Well, last year was a little bit extensive drought, and the fact that the water in Allen Lake was turbid.
But the year before was getting a little close to.
Yeah, so in fact, our latest report shows we've changed the rules, in fact, where we used to allow for a 120-day drought in 100 years. Now the engineers are saying we need to be more conservative and allow for a 150-day drought. So we've reacted to that, and we have to deal with that.
So water meters will help.
Water meters will, it's estimated by most experience, not just guesstimates, that water meters will reduce your usage by at least 40%.
And help you find all the leaks in the old pipes.
And that's a big factor. Kevin could help me with these numbers, but for instance, now, Weston and Cumberland, we both enjoy about 3,000 people. Weston uses 240,000 gallons a day.
A little less in the winter.
And less
Right
than
now they're about 160,000.
166 the
And
last
we're
3
at
months.
350.
And Cumberland uses
About 350,000.
So I must have a lot of leaks.
a lot of leaks and perhaps some usage issues.
Usage is a big one as well.
In the summertime, yeah.
Even now, I see sprinklers going for some odd reason.
We've always been used to just turn it on, it's all there.
Yeah.
But
So
the world's
$40
changing.
million is substantial. So the question that runs through my mind is, what is a more realistic figure to satisfy new developments who are working as we speak? They're still blasting up there beyond their outside line right now, line of houses. So what will it take to achieve improvements that will satisfy?
The last the engineering report was suggested that to satisfy the development that's on the horizon right now in Cumberland, you have to bring Hamilton Lake Dam back up. And
That's hundreds of thousands of
and
dollars.
well, it's more than that. And
Okay.
water meters and regret leaks and fix the outlet at Hamilton Lake. It's estimated that Hamilton Lake Dam would take about $3 million. Now, I gotta be candid with you, I heard, we were told 2 years ago it was 700,000, last year it was 1.5 million, this year it's 3 million. Those guesstimates, when you actually get someone on site, I'm no expert at that, but that's what we're being told. To do all up those 3 things I just mentioned would be closer to 5 million. And between the lines that we need to do, another million.
Could you repeat that? You said Hamilton Lake would be 3 million, meters would be how much?
What, meters? We had estimated that our engineers $1 million. Royston tells me today they did it for a lot less.
A lot longer ago.
They did it 10 years ago.
So new developments, I presume, would be burdened with installing the meters.
Sorry?
The developers on new developments, they would have to put the meters in
Yes.
on their connections.
Yes, but we'd be responsible for putting them into the homes that are now.
Yes, they're existing.
And what was the third thing you said besides twinning the lines? There was a...
Fixing leaks.
Fixing
Fixing
leaks.
the, thank you.
Now, some of that'll be, if we put a meter on your property line and shut the meter off and there's still a leak, guess what? It's your issue, right? So there's people have leaks in their systems, and as well as the village. And as we know, some of our infrastructure down the main street, some of the lines are, I'm told, that, Kevin, you can put, some of them are still that cardboard coated with creosote.
That's sewer, not
Sewer.
water.
Oh, okay.
But then the question
But they're
would
very
be,
old.
They're pretty weak, some of them.
over all this time, why wasn't council dealing with any of that stuff? Some of the people have been on council for more than just 1 or 2 terms.
It's funny.
Well, we're
Nothing
dealing
money
with,
can't fix.
can I answer that? Because I guess I'm the guy that's been here for about 35, 36 years.
It's all your fault.
I could write a book on improvements that nobody sees, unfortunately, like the upgrading the dams at the level with the money that
Yeah.
we had available, and I think that was one of the big things. We didn't have any development in Cumberland, any upgrading and maintenance. It was all coming out of the general taxpayer. And at that time, I know when I first got on council, I think Karen Sanford was our MLA, and we were after her about bumping up the homeowners to get more revenue into Cumberland. But all in all, we did with quite a bit that is being utilized. It hasn't been phased out the system. We twinned the line, a new intake at Henderson, twinned the line down to the Owls Lake Junction to clear the turbidity problem up, and this was before they made the change that reversed everything we had done over the years. I won't go into that. But I think I have to rise and defend, not myself, but the councilors that are all dead now, that were on council at that time. They did a lot of work on the system.
I don't think
But
you
yet
can defend anything. I think it's important for, and I want to make it very clear, whenever I say we've got this degraded infrastructure, that's not a reflection of any past council. There was no development for all those years. What could they do? They did the very best with what they had. And so I don't dwell on the past and say it's your fault or your
There
fault.
was some development.
Well, the fact is, here's where we are today.
But then in the budget, like what I was asking you guys earlier, is then why are we collecting only 270 in permits and licensing fees for building and subdivisions, but we're spending over 306 in staff time, and they're not paying for themselves as we sit. And then in 2009, you're going to collect 50,000, but you're going to be spending 265,000. And I'm just curious where this budget came in, if it's sort of another faulty infrastructure.
One of the things the last couple of years is upping our fees, and it seems we've done that quite a bit. And yeah, in some areas we still haven't got there where we should be, but it seems like we're constantly upping our fees.
But it gets worse, Leslie. In 2009, you're collecting 50,000, and you're spending 265,940. So why are we spending that kind of money if you're only collecting a little bit? Usually budgets are supposed to balance what comes in and what goes out in the area. Is it something that you can get back to?
Yes, we'll follow that up. But, you know, we're in a transition right now, and we've said that to the public for the last 2 years. We're at the point where we have an opportunity to have a commercial tax base, which we all agree with our OCP and everything. We need a commercial tax base in order to survive. But in the short term, you're going to spend resources. There's going to be a greater demand on your resources to deal with these applications than there is revenue. The revenue doesn't hit the ground until that commerce is operating.
I thought they're supposed to be paying for the developer's supposed to be paying for the staff time on the $25,000.
They paid some.
So
They paid some, but our rates are unpaid. And even the ones we brought up to date don't deal with every single job that planning has to do. And we don't have 3 planners, as a lot of people assume. We have 1 technician and 2 part-time planners.
Can I ask a quick question? I was looking at the plans for the village square, and it kind of looks like the stage and everything is quite connected to the building that's next door. And I just wondered why we're kind of designing that public space in that direction, when that building could change use in the future. And I just wondered how that came about. We just saw the picture in the paper.
Well, the design committee, met with the people that own the building next door, and they wanted to work together to make this thing fit, so that it made sense. celebrate that post office as well. That's one of Cumberland's heritage sites. They all seem to agree.
One of the issues down there is that there is no room for performers to be in before they come out to perform, or washrooms. And the building owner was agreeable to allowing the performers and to use his facilities when there was a performance on in the park.
But then the problem might occur next year if for some reason Scott sells his building to somebody else who doesn't want to allow people from the square to use his property.
The design is, it does incorporate so that they match, but it also works even if it gets cut off. So if in the future, future owner of the post office separated the spaces and didn't allow use of that area, the design in the park itself would work on its own. It would stand alone.
Yeah.
So as long as they work together and there's a cooperative owner, it's great, it works for the village, and if they become uncooperative in the future, that's okay. The design stands alone.
We'd have to put in some changes.
Yeah.
And just one other quick question is, sort of like when we have a lot of things that need to be repaired, you know, my husband and I are worried that, you know, we spend a certain amount on things like festivals and kind of extra items when you know, we've got a lot of basics that we need to put money in right now. And you know, of course we're concerned about our house being affordable as taxes go up. And I just wondered, are we going to look at restraints on how much money goes towards things such as additional festivals, and, you know, because it's a very small village, and how much burden the taxpayer can pay. It's kind of like, if we need to focus on infrastructure, should we tighten up on some of those other things?
I know, good point. And in fact, I think they were wise things to do to attract tourists and for the community, because that does bring money in eventually. But we've also agreed, for instance, to turn these things over more and more to the Chamber of Commerce and some of these groups to do it, because it attracts business. It's their role. And I think, in fact, this year we've said the Lantern Festival is going to
Recreation.
But we paid for the
society.
recreation.
Sorry?
We paid for recreation
Not-
staff and
There
everything.
will be no
Society,
money
no.
coming from recreation or the village for
The
it.
society, Recreation Society is a non-profit society that we don't pay anything to.
No, but we paid for all of the, what I found out tonight is the village taxes pays for all of the people that work at the CRI Hall and for the upkeep and everything. So that's not by the rec society.
The regular staff.
Yeah.
But not the society, and not the, for instance, the program directors pay for their own, the people that take the program pay for it. We don't.
There are certain expectations for public works staff and things like that to contribute, and, you know, I mean, they're great, all these things are great, but since we're such a small village, we also have to look at how much staff time enables some of these additional things, you know.
Because like historically, Empire's Day spent $60,000 in the village in time, and that's come up in budgets before, $60,000 on Empire Days.
I don't think we're there.
Not 60,000.
It was on other budgets.
No.
With all of the staff on.
So does that mean that the rec society takes over any debt
No.
that the Lantern Festival
No.
had either last year or this year?
No, it does not. There
So what happens to the debt?
won't be a debt.
Called property taxes.
There
No, it
won't
won't
be a debt.
No,
How do you arrange
because they're
that?
going to fund through sponsors, and it's the same as May Day. May Day puts on their event and make money. They don't have a debt, May Day.
No, I think Ron's talking about any deficit there was in this year. Are you passing that on to recreation?
Yes, that's my question.
No.
No.
Why would
I'd
they?
like to make a comment, Your Worship, if I may. This year, each department, everybody did their budget.
Yeah.
And just to show you what you talk about, bare bones, we had to cut, and there was nothing fancy. I mean, Kevin wanted certain things, and et cetera, et cetera. We had to cut $500,000 to bring this thing into perspective. And it was, tell you, I've never
Make
seen
it
it.
balance, you mean.
To have a workable budget.
Okay.
And we had to cut $500,000. And we did cut a lot of things, including some of the things you're talking about, the frills and that. There isn't going to be any this time around until we get our revenue back up to where it should be. But I only say that because I want you to know it wasn't easy to cut a lot of, there's groups, there's volunteer groups out there that look for grants, et cetera, and there's a lot of them. And we did. We started at the top and right through the bottom. So I think, to my feeling anyway, I can put my head on the pillow at night and know that we did a real good job of trying to keep that thing down as low as we could.
And I think it's safe for us to say quite clearly that business in Cumberland gained a whole lot of revenue because of that lantern festival.
But what did it cost the village?
Sorry?
What did it cost the village?
You can go into details.
Yeah, you have to spend money to make money.
The report will be on the next council.
You'll have the report coming up from the lantern festival, but the point I'm making is you put up money and you make money in the village. How much did we get back from the business? How much did they create employment? How much did it cost? You have to do almost a forensic audit to find out
You can't close
how
the
much
doors.
it cost.
What I did this year and it's going to be in my report, is I combined the last 3 years. We brought in over 52,000 people into Cumberland in 3 years, and the formula that we used to figure out the financial impact it had in Cumberland is the one that Comox Valley Tourism used, and they speculated it was probably close to $650,000 was brought into Cumberland through those 52,000 people.
I don't see where
Over
that
3
is.
years.
Over 3 years. Cumberland and surrounding area. Every person that comes spends X amount of money in your community or the surrounding community, and that's the formula that they use.
Except when you take all the school kids that came every year to go through that, they didn't spend anything except a buck to get in, so.
Absolutely
take all
wrong,
of those
Kate,
people.
because they all went down and had lunch, they went to the museum, they did other events in town also. They ate here too. So that, yes, they did spend other money here. And another thing is, lots of them brought their parents back.
It's like change of tack, it came to my mind. The Comox Lake campground. Fairly large,
Well,
Wait till you ask this question.
fairly large outfit, I believe, is looking at taking it over for 3 years. Is it, if they make money over the first 3 years, then it's going to be a long term. Is it still going to be accessible for everyone? Because I think this particular outfit, I think you remember of their campgrounds all over North America. And what's the impact going to be on the water? Because we have a fairly tight-fisted, right word, health department. It's
well, I can
keep
explain.
an eye on things. So
I can explain first. The reason for the short-term contract is to see if, in fact, we can put proposals to the regional district and the health board to increase the campsites without increasing any problem with the lake, or in fact decreasing it. And that's why the short-term contract, because they're not going to invest $800,000 if they can't get their money back through increased campsites. So for the first couple of years, the idea is they will clean up, operate in they'll spend a bit of money doing the basic things that need done in emergencies. They're hiring the same people that we had out there. If we get those permits, then we would look at a long-term contract that would allow them to invest the money to fix the things that we can't afford to. The water tower that needs replaced, the boat docks and all the stuff that needs done. And they have agreed on a number of things. One, the basic premise of our 1997 Comox Lake park plan would be followed. Two, that Cumberland residents, we would somehow issue a card or a sticker at the office, and you would get reduced rates on camping. If they introduce, one of the things that was thought of was to introduce a parking fee, and I'll tell you why. in any campsite, they found the damage or the littering and the work that's done in your park is done by people in day use mostly. So somebody needs to pay for that, either you as a taxpayer, because it's your park, or the people that do it. And the idea was Cumberland residents again would get a sticker, because it's your park. So they are fully willing to continue to make sure the residents that own the park have got priority. This year, in fact, the rates won't change, and the reservations that are made are still guaranteed. So it's up to us now in the next couple of years to work with them and design what we want that park to be. So they're not taking it over in the sense that they own it, it's still your park.
So are they paying rent?
Sorry?
Are they paying rent, or do we get any money out of it, or do they just keep the money?
We're looking at it how we're saving money, because we would have to put up, I think we estimated $70,000 just to do that tank this year. So it's
So they're not actually renting it for any fee, they're paying about to the village or whatever, and then taking over those things?
well, because we put out an RFP for a management contract, not leasing it out, not selling it, or leasing it. It's a case of people managing it, which we've done for the last few years, as you know.
We still retain ownership of the park.
Well, yeah.
It still belongs to Cumberland, we can't sell it, right? Everybody knows that. So what we have to do is look at what it's costing the village to maintain that park. The last 2 or 3 years was $70,000 just in public works budget that he's not spending anymore going out to the park. So your taxpayer dollar is staying in the coffer and going to other things rather than going to the park. So yes, they will gain if they get into a long-term arrangement. They're going to make money from, yes, your park, but it's still your park. And 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road, if we decide that we want to operate that park, then it becomes lease improvement. The municipality takes control of the park and we start operating the park again. That's the village's choice. That's your choice. But right now, we can't afford to run that park. So it's better to give it to somebody that can do a good job and maintain our asset and upgrade our asset. I think it's a benefit to the people of the community.
So is this forum working? Great.
Yeah.
I've already said it. Thank you.
I have a question on your budget. Maybe I don't understand, but it says the sale of 3 pieces of property during the year were not correctly reported. Revenue was understated and surplus overstated, and then you got $369,229 in brackets. That looks like a deficit to me. Anybody want to respond to that?
I think the deficit means that it was changed, put it in the other one. It doesn't always go like that.
Well, how much money did we make on those properties? Does anybody know?
Is that the amount, 300,000? Yeah, it was just under 400 was my recollection that the 3 properties were sold for.
Yeah, but it's in
and it was put
brackets.
into a reserve fund.
Oh.
Yeah, so that would.
You can't spend it.
Yeah.
You can't spend it, that's why it's put in there.
I understand that. But it still doesn't explain why its revenue is understated and surplus overstated, and it's in brackets. I don't get that.
Coming to the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll wait for this.
We are going to
Okay. I'd like to see cookies or nothing.
We should work with them then.
Chocolate.
Or we had a meeting that started at 7, so people could actually have dinner before they came.
There's a recommendation already.
And I have another comment, that I don't believe development permits work.
Yeah. I haven't seen them work.
Read my comment of the day. I think that we should have a bylaw for a performance bond, so that when the companies that are building don't perform, we keep the money. This, when we keep just landscaping and somebody pays $1,300, it's a joke. The development permits are a joke. You need to have a performance bond stuck behind where they pay like, $10,000. And if they don't perform, or if they only half perform, then they get half the money. Write up a bylaw and get them to perform better.
Okay.
Very good. That would be my comment.
Okay.
I'm just curious though, as council, because we're so strapped, are you guys gonna stop taking your automatic raises every year? You've had 2 so far. I know you're not making much, but I'm just curious if you're gonna keep them up since we're being short. So usually the top guys take the cut first, you know, the hit when there's.
Take the hit.
So that means when we get a surplus, they get their raises first.
Well, they did. They took their raises before we had a surplus.
Aw.
Well, I figure I'm worth more than 35 cents an hour.
Yeah.
Okay, we hear a good idea for a meeting time start. The forum seems
I think all
okay.
business owners are the most underpaid people.
Yeah.
Most business owners.
The forum seems okay at least, so how often do you think we should do this?
At least twice a year.
Well, yeah, I've already said at least twice a year. I'm asking if you think it should be more often to start with.
Quarterly.
I would say quarterly.
Enough things, I think, come up in 3 months to.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say that you wouldn't want to necessarily set it mandatorily for 3 quarters, but if all of a sudden you're going to have trilogy coming up, I think this would be a good way to be discussing stuff like the design guidelines that are on lot 4 that council has given first reading to, but no discussion has been had on it at council or any other place. And you could do it in this type of a thing a little easier.
You could do it in this type of a thing, but I'd like to keep these kind of things for general everything. Maybe we could have a meeting like this for something specific like Trilogy's design guidelines. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't know that you would want to zero in on a whole. We're not.
No, that's just to have this kind of, rather than just, you could have a town hall meeting that is strictly on one subject.
For,
There's
that's what I'm
nothing
saying,
wrong
yeah, I
with
don't have a problem with that.
Speaking of trilogy, I can go into a little bit, but not offensively. They were last in attendance at some council event 6, 7 weeks ago. I can't remember exactly.
It's been so long ago.
What?
It's been so long ago.
It's been a long time. So have we, the council or the manager, heard anything from them, either formally or informally, about how they're doing and what their plans are, and that's it.
Very simple answer, yes. And in fact, our negotiators are working with them.
Who are our negotiators, incidentally?
The 2 people we hired, Mark Johnson and Don Ruffley, that was a public announcement.
Oh, I bet I didn't know.
Who are negotiating with all the developers. That's what we established as a group we need to do. And we've said, don't come to us for second reading until you've got your CDA. That's what the Comprehensive Development Agreement. And that's what they're doing. And they've said apparently right now it's going pretty well and they're getting close.
So that's still going to have a lot of stuff that only has to be done by development permit?
Sorry?
Because a lot of the stuff in the CDA, like in our OCP, it said things had to be done under the comprehensive planning agreement, and then it got changed to where a lot of that stuff Allison has been saying can be just done by development permit, which I agree with Colleen, in the village haven't been enforced at all. And IPI and then the dump down by my way are examples of stuff like that. We don't have great faith in DPs being actually enforced by anyone in this village. And if that's what you're going to let them do out there, I think you're going to see stuff that's not so nice.
Well, I don't think we should presume that's what we're going to let them do out there. I don't think it's appropriate to discuss publicly what those negotiations are until they're done. That would be a weakening, if you will.
May I ask a question about our property taxes? I understand they're going up 6.9% this year. Can we expect this every year, or is there going to be some sort of ceiling? Because if you're on a fixed income, you're going to be taxed off your property.
Well, this is in fact why we've held them down there. Look at the value of the property's gone up 30% on average for the last 3 years.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's nothing to do with us. You can't eat your property. I mean, you live there, and you enjoy living there. If the value goes up, it's not my doing. I don't profit from that because I don't want to sell my property.
No, I understand.
But you adjust the mill rate.
I understand. Sure. That's why we've adjusted the mill rate down, so that you're not hit as hard.
Because if they go up substantially every year, I mean, there's going to be a point where you can't afford to live there.
We're very aware of that, and try and work and keep it as low as possible to try and meet our needs and our budget.
You kind of ended it sort of earlier, it seemed like, but I just wanted to note to everyone that I think we've kind of had an accomplishment recently with the schools. We've got potential for a school and a high school here in Cumberland, and it might be great for our youth to be able to know that grades are going to benefit coming to Cumberland. They won't have to be bussed out half an hour each day or plus. I know waiting on the actual bus was about half an hour, and waiting for the bus could be, my first year at Marquisfold was an hour, and then they came in with a new bus contract, which has its positives and negatives. I won't go into that, but it went down to about 35 minutes waiting at the school, which you could do stuff in, but you were kind of strapped because it wasn't really homework time because you just finished doing schoolwork, but it wasn't really like activities because they didn't have enough time.
And it's a good point. There's some positive things going on as well. The schools of Luke classic example.
So you think it's a good idea?
There's mixed feelings, but I think that there's reducing the school size to 400 or whatever the school size is going to be is interesting in that it provides a different environment than the big 1,200 student which is, I don't know what the average is for our province, but I'm guessing with Vancouver schools thrown in there, they have a larger populace and Victoria schools.
And the point is, whether individuals think it's a good idea, the superintendent of schools listened to Cumberland's concerns and supported Cumberland's concerns about having their school maintained, and in fact the way to do it is bring the high school back. So there are some good things happening.
One other thing is I've heard people around tonight too wondering about the people up at Coal Valley with the mud on the roads and the silt going into storm drains. Is that going to be looked after so that the roads get cleaned up by the developers and they put screens in the storm so that the silt doesn't go into it?
I'm sure that Kevin will be talking
The catch basins catch the silt before it goes into the actual storm, and as far as the roads go, I talk to them weekly.
So are they going to clean up the catch basins eventually because they fill up with silt and then they...
We will be cleaning the catch basins as we always do.
So shouldn't they have to pay to clean them?
You can talk to them about that if you want. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, it's a valid point. They're also taxpayers.
And we are going to benefit in the end.
What about like all the dump trucks going down Dunsmuir? I've noticed more potholes on Dunsmuir.
No, that's because they don't want to go down Ulverston. It's gravel, it's full of holes.
Well, they go down Dunsmuir and then they go up Union Road.
And it's got a shatang in it. They can't maneuver it.
What route would you choose them to go is the question.
Is that how it works?
Maybe on finding out some kind of cost for filling that kind of holes up, potholes and stuff.
That's part of the process regularly.
Mr. Worship, can I make one comment before we finish? Because I could see us getting into a little...
Well, no, we're going to finish because we're supposed to be finished at 7 o'clock.
I just want to make one comment to the people. One other thing you should keep your eyes open on is the future of our lab in the health center. We've gradually lost all the services that are there. I understand it could be in July, it'll be eliminated, so that anybody has to have blood work will have to go to court in your Comox. And maybe, if you're interested, because that's a very important part of Cumberland, drop a letter to VHA and just question them a little bit. A nice little note just to remind them that you're aware of what they might be doing, maybe they could be helping you. I do understand it may be put back somewhere else in town, but I don't hold my hand on my heart waiting for it. So I just say it's nice for the general public to give somebody else hell instead of us all the time.
Actually, I can catch you up on that a little bit. I did talk to VHA, and That's, VHA doesn't operate that lab, St. Joe's does. And it was St. Joe's decision, and in fact, VHA did tell me, the chairman told, the CEO told me, we can talk to Michael Compass at St. Joe's, which I've already done. I've sent him an email and a phone call to contact him. And VHA will offer that if they indeed are closing it, which we haven't heard formally yet, they will offer that they can take blood at the renal unit there. So we can come up with a solution. So, the renal dialysis unit there.
Dialysis.
So we can come up with a solution, and we're working on that.
So you're saying that St. Joe's that's closing it down, so it's Michael Compass and the Bishop in Victoria who would do that?
That's what I'm saying, it isn't VHA, that's not the...
God, yeah.
Is there any interest at all on the industrial lands that Cumberland owns?
Sorry?
Any interest at all on the industrial lands?
Yes, I'm told they're still negotiating.
The ethanol plant is dead.
No, it isn't. I don't bring it up every day because I'm losing faith. But apparently they have negotiated successfully on what they would agree to pay for that land, and they're working on raising the funds for the actual plant itself.
And
And
then
it
they
keeps
need water.
getting postponed. And they would be self-sufficient in water and sewer.
They wouldn't use any of our water.
Is this a corporation we know of, or is this who, do we have any clue who's buying it, or do we just know, hey, these people are
It was
interested?
Can-Am Ethanol One, we were told, that was told publicly, you know, who belongs to them, we don't know by now, but that's where it's at, I'm told by Hancock. But there is other people interested if they're not. So,
One more quick question.
all right, last question.
Okay, you said the taxes are going up 6.9%, and that you lowered the mill rate to do that. What was it if you hadn't lowered it? What would it
It would have been about 26%. It would have been about 28% last year and 30% the year before. No.
If the mill rate stayed the same.
The assessed increase. That's not our control, that's a BC Assessment Authority. So we've lowered the mill rate. So what you're going to get, by the way, if one day if this levels out, and unless the mill rate goes up to get us back to normal. So you have to adjust the mill rate if you want to maintain the taxes where they need to be to meet your budget. By the way, that's not as high as Comox was. I think Comox is 9-something. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.